No, but some of the ways I taught was not correct today. So it has been a learning curve as far as the construction of what Pine Mountain is. I didn't teach it exactly right when I taught it. But anyway, here goes, and thank you for joining. Uh, we're going to start with a view of Pine Mountain, and this was taken from a helicopter 4 or 5 years ago on a ride. I wasn't on the way to the hospital. It was more or less a PR thing for my son and his children. So it was good. And little did I know at the time that I would be sharing these photos with other interested people. But during the construction of the new section of US 23 in 1998, the Pine Mountain Gap Trust fault was exposed. Geologists consider the exposed rock to be one of the most remarkable exposures of rock in the entire eastern United States. On September the 26th, Pound Gap was declared Kentucky's first distinguished geologic site by the Kentucky Society of Professional Geologists. Geologists and earth science students from all over come to study this wonder that's in our own backyard. So we will, let's see right here. These are a couple of rock structures right on top of Pine Mountain, right across from the filling station. And when I first saw that, I told you I'm on a learning curve again. I thought, I bet that is Chattanooga Shale, but that was not correct. It's a shale for sure, but it's probably got some oily materials in it to give it that dark color. Another picture of that, and you can see the fault lines there and the rock structures. And that top rock is a conglomerate with pebble sized particles. It's a cap rock of Pine Mountain. It's what holds it up. If you didn't have that cap rock, you might have Pine Hill. This illustration was shared with me by Phil Shelton, and Phil's my mentor and has been for since I took geology classes. But this is a real clear illustration of the physiographic provinces in Virginia and the size of the Pine Mountain thrust sheet. And you can see where Pound Gap is. High Knob is in that thrust sheet. So this was really new knowledge for me, and so I hope if uh, you're in the learning mode, you can learn something. And if you know everything already, well, just sit back and relax. We're going down the mountain here, and you see the face of Pine Mountain. A little closer observation. We're on just a scenic tour going down. It's a beautiful day to take photographs. Coming into Jenkins, and that rock face in the background is Raven Rock. I think our naturalists have hiked out there. This is a good view showing Pine Mountain, the layers of rock. The lake in Jenkins. Jenkins was a coal town. I think it was incorporated in 1912. It was named after a banker's wife. And in our business, Phil mentioned that I'm part of a business out in town. We have met so many nice and knowledgeable people from Kentucky that take pride in their homes, and it's just a pleasure to deal with them. Jenkins is like a lot of the coal towns around here. Coal's not king anymore, and the coal jobs aren't there, so it's a struggle to keep your head above water a lot of times. Gravel pit. We have a gravel pit in Powell Valley Mountain also, but the gravel is used to put on strip jobs. It's used as aggregates for building, and there's a big market for this limestone. And when you see limestone, as we get into, you know you had an inland sea. Limestone is a carbonate, and that's where it comes from, is an inland sea. And one thing that I did learn was completely new knowledge for me. Natural tunnel is limestone, but it's also dolostone, which has magnesium in it. And if you have magnesium in your lime, it will not form a concrete. So I had no idea. Here's a strip job, reclaimed strip job, and I'm not going to get into any environmental talks, but before 1977, there were no laws governing strip jobs, and you could the coal operators were free to do whatever they wanted to get the coal. But SMACRA came along in 1977, and the coal miners have to adhere to national standards. And it was a big deal in 1977. And there's some benefits. We do have some level land to, our airport in Wise is built on a strip job. A couple of shopping centers are built on strip jobs. So we don't have level land. We have to make use of what land we have, and we have to make use of this land created by strip jobs. I thought I would put this in here just to review you just a little bit on time scale. The geologic time scale. And if you look at this, you start with the Cambrian. And we don't have much of a record in Precambrian times. And what is amazing about this is what we know about is about 12% of Earth's history. Before the Cambrian times, there were no hard-shelled organisms that made fossils. So the first fossil that we knew anything about was a trilobite. And these go through the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, Cenozoic periods. And when I was teaching, I didn't make my students learn this, but I gave them extra credit if they could remember the order. And the way I taught it, and it helps me somebody says Mesozoic, I know where I am on the time scale, or if they say Devonian, I know where I am. But the way I taught it was if you start with C, O, S, D, M, P, P, T, J, C, T, Q. My mnemonic was, come on, slide down, my pretty peach tree, just catch the queen. So we're going to be talking about today the Silurian, Devonian, Mississippian, Pennsylvanian time period. So thank you for listening to that. Okay, let's go forward right here. So we're going up the mountain right now. All right. Let me go back to this slide. Pine Mountain is a single steep and long mountain ridge that breaks the continuity of eastern Kentucky and Cumberland Plateau topography and forms much of the boundary between Virginia and Kentucky. Rising 800 to 1,000 feet above the hills of the Cumberland Plateau, the northwest face of Pine Mountain is actually the leading edge of the Cumberland Overthrust Block. a rectangular area roughly 120 miles long by 20 miles deep, underlain by the Pine Mountain Thrust Fault, a low angle fault along which the upper layers of sedimentary rock separated from strata many thousands of feet below and violently pushed upward. Lateral tectonic stress caused the eastern side of the fault to override the western formation. The block itself approached 2 miles in thickness. Resistant sandstone and conglomerates, older than the underlying coal measures, maintained the crest of the ridge. The thrust faulting was caused by a collision between Europe and Africa and North America 280 to 310 million years ago. So, pretty impressive illustration there. And again, Pine Mountain's in the thrust sheet, as you know, but also Powell Valley is in that thrust sheet. And then you get into the valley and ridge, which is really what we call the Appalachian Mountains. And then the Blue Ridge, which are the highest mountains in Virginia, and then the Piedmont, and then the coastal plain. Okay, so now we're going to start up the mountain. Leaving Jenkins, heading to Pound Gap, we recall that sedimentary rock strata, like the pages in a book, correlate with a particular time period. The strata in Pine Mountain represent a nearly complete sequence of late Devonian, Mississippian, and early Pennsylvanian strata on the Kentucky side of Pine Mountain. The lower part of the road cut consists of shales, siltstones, and sandstones. Most of the oil and gas found in southeast Kentucky had its origin in these hydrocarbon-rich rocks. These sediments were laid down under shallow seas to deeper water seas. And then going on up the mountain to the limestone, the series of gray limestones at mid-level of the road cut belong to the Newman limestone of late Mississippian age. These limestones were deposited on tropical carbonate banks for shallow seas, much like you find in the Bahamas of today. These limestones along Pine Mountain are the closest limestone sources to southeast Kentucky and play an important economic role in the region, as we talked about. And there's some, that's limestone interspersed with sandstone. Another piece of sandstone with some limestone. And these divisions between rock layers are not perfectly straight. Sometimes there's a little bit of bleed in them. You can see that interspersing of, I was reading about this today, and those pale layers are some kind of a clay. Okay, the top layer, the upper part of the road cut is made from a sequence of shales, siltstones, sandstones, and limestones, and paleosoils. These paleosoils are especially helpful because they provide clues about the ancient tropical climate in this region. So again, back to the physiographic provinces of Virginia. The Appalachian Plateau. Formation of the Appalachian Plateau began during the Paleozoic era. When the Appalachian Mountains were formed, the plateau was lifted. The streams crossing the plateau weathered the region and created a rugged landscape, carrying away the eroded materials eventually to the Gulf of Mexico. In Wise County, the contrast between the undisturbed horizontal layers in the Appalachian Plateau and the uplifted, tilted, even verticalized sedimentary rock of the valley and ridge are evident. A large portion of the plateau is a coal field, which was formed approximately 320 million years ago during the Carboniferous period. The material was preserved as organic sedimentary rock by first being buried in the anorexic, oxygen absent bottoms of shallow tropical swamps in the region. To my best knowledge, 12 feet of a plant material compressed to make 1 foot of coal. After millions of years of compaction and cementation, the organic material became the sedimentary rock coal. The coal here is bituminous coal and could be changed into coke in special coke ovens and then used to make steel. Some of our bituminous coal is also a metallurgical grade coal, which is in high demand still. So going into Virginia, and I did live in Kentucky a couple of years back when I had my two boys, and I was always, I hate to admit this, tickled to death when I saw that Virginia sign and would come home. Our life here in the mountains for more than 100 years has revolved around our coal industry, which boomed in the late 1800s forward. Many of our coal counties became dominated by coal mining. Towns formed as well as the coal camps nearby. Uh, you would call that a one industry town or county or region. And when you have that, it's real hard when that's the only thing you have to depend on is coal. And all during this 100 and some years that we've had coal, there's been booms and busts, and people just ride through them. But right now, our coal production peaked in 1990, and we're on the downside of a bell curve, and we have little peaks, but coal. I read in preparing for this, we have several years of coal left. We've got a lot in reserve, but some of the good coal has been mined. There's been a lot of remining done on some of those old high walls and mining sites that were left uncared for. And the remining, if there's still coal there and you have the technology to get it today, the coal people have to and are required to by law to put it back to meet the SMACRA standards of 1977. So that's a win-win for everybody. Wait just a second. So we're going down through Appalachia, and you see the big blue tube that's taking coal from the Pine Mountain across the highway to the railroads. And there's one down in Tacoma, and there's one somewhere else. And I have a few pictures of this is right beside the railroad tracks in Appalachia, and we're going up into some of the coal camps right now. And this is in Stonega. Need help with mud and dust. And the next one is much less dust and thanks. And this is just sort of an indication of the kind of people that live in these hollers. They are really nice people, gracious people, and would help you out in a heartbeat. And our life here in the mountains for more than 100 years has revolved around our coal industry, which boomed in the late 1800s forward. We have already said that. We're down to many folks from the South, including many African Americans, moved here for the jobs. As the demand for more workforce grew, immigrants were also recruited. So you could say that coal gave us the wonderful diversity of people that we have today. When coal production declined in the 50s and 60s, our population dipped drastically Folks moved north to Ohio, Indiana to find work, but today the draw of the mountains has brought them back home in the retirement years, or they come back just to visit. They come back for the fall fling, for the festivals. And if once you've lived in the mountains, you love the mountains. And I really don't think you could be happy anywhere else, in my humble opinion. Uh, some more pictures of coal camps. I've been photographing coal camps for a long time. I think they're real interesting. And if I have somebody that comes along and wants to see the real area, the heart of the area, I take them on a drive up through the coal camps. In fact, we had a photography club 20 or 30 years ago when we photographed the coal camps. So they're fascinating. The history is very, very, very interesting. In fact, I tell my children I'm the only person still standing in my family that has lived in a coal camp. I lived with my mother in Crane's Nest when I was a little girl and the only child in the family. So I remember it well. The railroads, of course, the coal brought the railroads around. The first railroad came around 1890. And the coke ovens, these are at Pine Branch. They're still standing. They have weathered a lot. I photographed these same coke ovens back really about 30 years ago with a real good large format camera, and it's one of the best photos I've ever taken. But in any event, these coke ovens used to circle around Norton. They were all around Appalachia. I'm not sure if they were at Glamorgan or not, but you fired these things up, and I don't know how the procedure went, but they put the coal in there, and in the absence of oxygen, they made coke, which you have to make steel. So this is really what brought the coal barons to Southwest Virginia. The coke from these coke ovens from our bituminous coal powered the Industrial Revolution. So it was an exciting time to live. Now, you hear stories, and one story that I heard, um, they had these coke ovens around Norton, and one thing, they put out so much dirt and grime you had to clean your porches every day. That was one thing. But the second thing was uh, some fella fell in a coke oven, and all that was left was his bone in his foot, something like that. Horror stories. But when we photographed these coke ovens, um, behind the coke ovens, the fellows that worked there had their gardens. So it was just, you know, it was just sort of uh, something you didn't expect to see. And also, I was with a couple of girlfriends when we were photographing, and we went down in the late afternoon and the sun was wrong. So we went back in the next morning, and some fellow, this is 12 miles off the Norton Appalachia Road, some fellow said, "Girls, you all be careful. There's a lot of rattlesnakes over there." So anyway, we were careful. This is Tom's Creek, close to Crane's Nest that I told you about, and it it used to be a really hopping spot in Coburn. Probably more activity went on in Tom's Creek than anywhere around. Crane's Nest is about a mile toward Sandy Ridge. And then we get back to the valley and Powell Valley. I bet that is one of the most photographed spots in all of Southwest Virginia. And we take it for granted. I know it's beautiful. We take it for granted and don't appreciate it like we should or could. But people that come here and have never seen it, they are amazed at the beauty. And going down the valley, you see the tilted rocks, and you're going to have to use your imagination a little bit right now. These tilted rocks on both sides of the valley tilted up toward a structure called an anticline, and it was the top of a curve that curved upward. Now, when you have the bottom of a curve, it's called a syncline. But you can see those rocks, and I don't think I've ever seen a rock I didn't like. But those rocks are really pretty also. And I'm sure some of you watching may remember when we didn't have that road going down the valley. And it was so steep um, that it was a engineer's nightmare to design a bridge. And the best I remember, Wise County or the Department of Transportation probably called in Swiss engineers to help design a bridge. So going down the valley, and we are to Chattanooga Shale, which I've seen this shale all over, and it is a widespread layer of rock that you find in a lot of places. And it actually contains a little bit of uranium. And if you have radon in your house, it comes from this Chattanooga Shale. And if you try to walk up that, you're hiking, you might not make it. That looks like the same rock that I have seen at the gap going between Gatlinburg and North Carolina. I'm not 100% certain of that, but it looks like it, and I have always thought it was. A couple weeks ago, I went down the old road going to Powell Valley, and just to take these photos right here, and got on the internet and looked up Vulcan. They are the largest producer of limestone and limestone products in the United States. Now, how about that? But right here, you can see those layers of limestone and formed in an inland sea in use today, part of our natural resources. And we have to have natural resources, gives us a better standard of living. A relief map, and I think this is actually my son Travis's map. I borrowed it, unbeknownst to him. But you can see Pine Mountain right at the top, and you can come on over toward the center and the right, and you can see Powell Valley. You can see the structure where it nose of it's at the High Knob Tower, and you can look down the valley and you can see how it spreads out and gets more gentle. Cumberland Mountain, Pine Mountain. When I put that first photograph up, I think the mountain in the beyond Pine Mountain was Cumberland Mountain. And then this is a good one to see Big Stone Gap and High Knob, Powell Mountain, Stone Mountain. And then we're back to a plateau, level rock. This one gives you a real good idea of what's underneath the land. And you see Powell Valley with the Anticline on the right. You can see the eroded plateau and then the Pine Mountain overthrust. And if you could see beneath the surface of the land, this is the rock structure. So we've had a lot of information, and I wanted to sort of finish this up with the beauty of the area. And this is in the spring, headed up toward one of the coal camps. Dogwoods are in bloom. This is a little church in one of the coal camps. Same time of year, the dogwoods are in bloom. The first coal camps, the coal owners would erect a church, and they usually would just erect one church in a coal camp. As the population grew, they probably built more churches to service more denominations. And this is B Tunnel. A lot of people used to say it was the shortest tunnel in the world, but actually, I think it's the second or third shortest tunnel in the world. And this shot is an example of what folks around here are doing right now. They're trying to uh, diversify and incorporate tourism into their livelihood, really. Draw people here. They'll stay in the hotels and eat meals and spend some money and keep the economy going. But Appalachia has worked real hard, and they have that. There's no bridge down there that it looked like it was falling down, but they have solidified, I'll say, that bridge or made it safe to walk across. And you can walk through the tunnel and walk all the way to Big Stone. And I think that's pretty neat. Great rhododendron going up on High Knob. This is black cohosh. Black cohosh. Which is it, Phil? Cohosh? Cohosh. Okay. Up on High Knob this summer. It was pretty amazing up there. I just used this one photograph, but you drove across that ridge going from the overlook out to Big Cherry. There were fields of black cohosh, and they were gorgeous. And this is a fall photo. I had my grandson with me when I made this photo a few years ago, and he has always liked to get out and ride around, and he was a lot younger then, and so we just caught that photo, and I've always liked it. And I don't think there's any time prettier on the knob than the fall. We are in the middle of the north and south here, so we have a great diversity of trees and color of trees, and north meets south, so we don't just have northern things or southern things. We have a good mix and have more diversity in this area than just about any place in the United States besides Hawaii. We're called a biological hotspot here. And if Wayne Browning's watching, I don't know if he is or not, but he knows all about what's on these trees, and that is rime. And it gives Big Cherry a lot of their water. It adds to the watershed, and it is gorgeous. You just happen to be up there at the right time, and it just happened that way this day. And this last photo is the Appalachians run from central Alabama up to through the United States, up through Newfoundland, and actually across the ocean to Scotland and Finland, but we're going to stop right here in Newfoundland today. Uh, when I was teaching, there was a lot of opportunities for travel And this was a trip with Virginia Tech and interested teachers. So this this was a great trip. And this is the head of the Appalachian Mountains in Newfoundland. So that finishes me up today, and I appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Any questions for Bonnie?
Whenever Bonnie put back in the summer, I guess it was, whenever she put that black cohosh up, I got to looking around my woods behind my house, and I'll be if I didn't have it growing all around that bank. So thank you, Bonnie. I found some at my place too.
You're welcome. It was just amazing.